Hello everyone, this is D&D with ET, and I'm here today at beautiful Lee Point. Unfortunately, these trees are set to be chopped down next month probably, which is unfortunate, but is what it is. I'm here today to talk to you about role-playing, and specifically getting your shy players to roleplay. So, firstly, I just wanted to acknowledge that role-playing and expecting your players to roleplay is a much bigger ask than probably any other hobby that they do, right? Because role-playing is not just speaking in voice or doing different body language or speaking in first person for your character. It's also immersing yourself into the world and loving the world and loving your character and loving your character's loves and really opening yourself up for emotion and to be vulnerable. And that's not the easiest thing for everybody to do. And I certainly can't think of another hobby that does that in front of other people, right? So you're asking a lot from your players, and you're asking them to love your world and to love the NPCs in your world. And if your world is not worth loving, then you shouldn't even be watching this video, right? That's a whole other topic for another video to make your world kick ass and worth loving, right? But if you love your world and you've poured your heart and soul into it, then I think that's brilliant, right? Your world is worth loving if you love your world. There can be a few reasons why your players are not role-playing, but I just wanted to touch on the fact that we humans, we are always role-playing. We are always acting. It is human to act. Like when we meet somebody else for the first time, we are putting the best foot forward of ourselves. We are showing them the parts of ourselves that are the best, and we are hiding the parts that are bad. We are role-playing the best version of ourselves. So we are all role-playing. Your players are capable of role-playing even if they've never role-played a dwarf before, because it's something that we've been doing all our lives. That being said, your players may be too shy to sort of open up and roleplay that dwarf in front of, other people. They can be afraid of judgment, right? That's one of the reasons we humans act. We're afraid of judgment. And so we recede and don't do it and don't put ourselves out there because we're afraid of being judged. Okay, so number one, your players could just be too shy to roleplay, right? They're afraid of being judged, they're afraid of being vulnerable and, making that silly voice of that dwarf, or they're afraid of taking the game more seriously than everybody else at the table. So they could just be too shy, and this is what I was when I started D&D. I was way too afraid to roleplay as a dungeon master and as a player in the game, and I had an experience where I joined an online Fandelver game, and I was playing some kind of cleric, and I made a quippy one-liner in the first combat of the game, something about defending my friends, but it was really cheesy and really over the top, and I was taking it a bit seriously, but because I said it so nervously that it came out almost like a joke, and I don't think the other players at the table really knew how to react, so they all laughed, and then I felt terrible because they laughed, but really I was trying to roleplay, and another part of it is the dungeon master wasn't really tolerant of my shyness. He had expectations from me, and I wasn't really living up to those expectations. So I sort of checked out after everybody laughed at me, and then he got frustrated that I was sort of receding and not interacting as much in the game, and things like this. So you want to be careful about laughing at people when they roleplay, obviously. So the second reason that your players could not be roleplaying, especially new players, is that they don't know how, right? Because they know how to act, because they're a human being, but they don't know how to roleplay a dwarf. And this can just be, using cultural greetings of dwarves in your world. And it's really up to you to show them the ropes and for you to put your foot forward and roleplay before they do, so that they can sort of copy what you're doing. The third reason, and this is the difficult one, is that they just don't care, right? So some players, they come to D&D to hang out with their friends, or just to eat snacks and roll dice and shout. They're not necessarily there to roleplay, and they're not taking the parts of the game as seriously as you are, right? So these players, they may never care about roleplaying. Maybe you could, through storytelling prowess, get them to care about your game world, but sometimes that's just not in the cards, and that's okay. But it's up to you what you're going to do with these players. So just focusing on the shy players for a moment, I have 3 things that you can do in your next D&D game to make them more comfortable. And this advice is going to be the exact same advice I would give to somebody who is the shy person at a party, or somebody who wants to bring that shy person into their friends group. So number 1 is to ask them how their week has been, right? So before the game, spend a whole hour just talking amongst the group, asking everybody how their week has been, so that they can decompress. If anything's on their mind, they can sort of let that go. And, be their friend, care about what's happening in their lives, and check up on them every single week. How has your study been? How has, this goal been? Are you making progress in this aspect of your life? So yeah, that's something totally outside of the game that can make them feel more relaxed at the table inside of your game. My second suggestion is to play in a non-stressful environment. This can be, avoiding public spaces like a pub or a D&D club, because, in public we definitely act a bit differently than we would in a private house. But it's also to avoid background noise, right? If it's too noisy and distracting, that can be stressful, and players are not going to want to open up in those kinds of environments. This is also, feeding your players and making sure they aren't hungry, because if they're hungry, they're a bit moody and they're getting distracted. They're thinking about food, not your game. So you don't have to fork out a bunch of money to feed your players, but maybe you can organize some pizza halfway through your game, or maybe you can get a $5 bag of chips or something like this, right? Encourage your players to bring snacks to the game as well. I give my players inspiration if they bring snacks to the game, and every single one of my players brings snacks to every single game. It's great. Okay, my third reason is the funnest one. It's to be the biggest dork, right? Because if you're putting on the silliest voice and you're just the worst at role-playing, and you're doing it constantly, all the time, without missing a beat, then your shy player, if they, do a little bit of role-playing and they speak in first person just a little bit, that might fly totally under the radar and people might not even notice it, which is great. But they also will probably be better than your attempt at role-playing, right? Because you're just putting on such a ridiculous act. And this doesn't mean you can't take the game seriously sometimes, but really D&D is you at a table with your friends. You're going to be making jokes most of the time, and laughing most of the time is the best situation, and then you can sort of swap beats and then go into the more serious emotional side of the role-playing when the story comes to that. But every other time, just be the biggest dork at the table and just be ridiculously ridiculous, and that will make your players feel more comfortable to open up and give it a go, because if anything, at least they'll be better than you. Okay, so that was my suggestions on how to get a shy player to roleplay. This is ET and D&D with ET signing off. Thanks for listening.